Inauguration Day is full of formalities, but not everything always goes according to plan. Here I have a list of some unusual inaugural circumstances, but before I start on that, this is a picture from the very first inauguration that was photographed. And this is when Buchanan was being inaugurated, the 15th president. You would think that when they moved Inauguration Day to January, that's when the coldest inaugurations would have taken place. However, there's one in March that still stands out. Imagine it. The year is 1873. It's Ulysses S. Grant's second inauguration. And part of the festivities, they had canaries. And these canaries, along with the beverage and the food, all froze. So there was no singing canaries. However, there are some that believed that it wasn't the freezing temperatures that were as low as 4 degrees that day that froze the canaries, but instead it was the gas lamps that caused asphyxiation. Either way, there was no singing. Speaking of freezing cold temperatures, I would be remiss if I did not mention William Henry Harrison yet again. Last time I spoke of him, I mentioned how his speech was the longest inaugural speech in presidential history, uh, like nearly going on 9,000 words. It took nearly 2 hours for him to finish, which again was ironic because he was the shortest tenured president. But it was actually his inauguration that made it so. Despite the fact that it was a windy, freezing, rainy day, uh, he decided that on March the 4th, 1841, he didn't need to wear a coat. So he had this very long speech. Then he went to the inaugural ball, never covering up. And of course, it's cold outside, but that's how he caught pneumonia. And then 31 days later, he passed away from it. I sometimes wonder if his wife had been with him in Washington, D.C. for the inauguration, would he have lived? Because would she have seen him without a coat and said, hey, it's really cold outside and it's wet. Why don't you just wear a coat? Just bring with you in case you need it. Who knows? Unfortunately, William Henry Harrison was the first president to die in office. Speaking of getting out of the White House, once upon a time, the White House was open during inauguration, and people would come and tour around during the day freely. However, in 1829, right after President Andrew Jackson's inauguration, he brought in a rather hefty crowd, unlike any prior. So that created a weird situation for the wealthy elite in the area because that meant there were a lot more commoners in their vicinity comparatively. And so that created a bit of a panic. They were having to talk and acknowledge these people who they typically may have seen that were below them. And it caused so much of a chaotic scene that a woman from my home state of Georgia, who was the wife of, I believe, a congressman, uh, jumped out a window to escape this situation. So don't worry though, she was not injured. This scene actually is depicting the White House, and that's Jackson on his way to the inauguration. The Wild West was all the rage in the U.S. when Eisenhower was elected president. And here in 1953 is his inauguration. And part of the entertainment, you can see a cowboy right here lassoing Eisenhower. And right over here, you can see his Vice President Nixon laughing it up. You can learn more about the presidencies of the men I talked about today, or any of the presidents, right here on my page. And when we meet again, I will be starting a new presidential theme